Live to Australia, now on BBC One, where the race is on for pole position in tomorrow's Grand Prix. All the action now direct from Melbourne.
In 1852, people leaving Britain travelled to one destination more than any other: Melbourne, Australia. All of them chasing one thing: gold, as the city boomed. Then, in 1996, the rush returned. A new group of people arrived, chasing a dream once again. Albert Park, the scene of many a driver's Formula One debut. It was also the location that launched the start of one team's incredible story in 2009. "12 months later, Formula One's weekend waltz in the park returns. But who will advance in Australia in 2010? Two weeks since Formula One's season opener in the Middle East, we've travelled a further 7,500 miles away from home to Australia. On the southeast corner in the country, in the state of Victoria, Melbourne's home to over 4 million people. And for one weekend a year, Albert Park is home to Formula One. A stunning location, a tricky circuit, passionate fans. It's a place Formula One loves to visit. And it's just one of 19 different locations that make up the season. Malaysia's next in just a few days' time. The British Grand Prix in early July, with a Korean round set for late October. By then we'll have a much better idea about who's really got a winning car beneath them. Currently, Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa lead the way in the Drivers' Championship after the opening weekend under this new point system. Lewis Hamilton sits third. Rubens Barrichello rounded off the point scorers last time out. Well, good morning. Welcome to Melbourne. It's rather windy, rather grey, but thank you so much for setting your alarms so early to join us for our build-up to qualifying for this weekend's Grand Prix. And it's the second race of the year, and I can't think of two men that I'd rather spend it in the company of than David Coulthard and Eddie Jordan. David, apart from the people watching this on iPlayer, because that is just cheating slightly, they've made a real sacrifice setting their alarm for such an early point in the day, particularly on a Saturday. So Formula One this weekend could really do with delivering something special, couldn't it?
Well, indeed, and to say well done to everyone who's got up to watch us. I don't think they need to be too concerned after the first race in Bahrain, which obviously didn't deliver a great deal of excitement. I think what we've seen here in Friday and Saturday morning practice is incredibly close here, and I think this qualifying session is definitely going to deliver some excitement.
And the cars, particularly those at the front running closely, isn't just the only reason why this could be a pretty special weekend, because this place does deliver some pretty exciting moments on track, doesn't it?
Well, we've just seen by the first or the previous qualifying session, it's 8, possibly 10 cars that are going to vying for the pole position, and we haven't seen that for some time. We've also got Michael Schumacher on fire. He looks really, really strong. And don't forget, it's the first time we've seen 24 cars here in Melbourne. So a little added boost, and I think that all vies well for the excitement here.
Yes, it's going to be good. Let's hope it's going to be good anyway. If you're feeling a little bit tired, make sure you stay awake, because we've got loads of great stuff coming up in our pre-qualifying build-up. But if you're an Italian, particularly if you're a fan of the of the red mark, then what a weekend it was for you guys in Bahrain. A 1-2 finish. I would imagine that Italian fans would love Formula One to stay exactly as it is at the moment. However, after the top 10 front runners pretty much ended the race as they started it, apart from poor old Sebastian Vettel, who once again was cursed with bad luck in the desert. Well, really, Formula One's got to take a good, hard look at itself. Somebody needs to ask some tough questions. Thankfully, we've got Eddie Jordan.
And we're away now in 2010. Fernando Alonso wins for the first time in 2010.
We've all heard the reaction to the first race in Bahrain, and some of them very critical. But before we get carried away, or we make knee-jerk reactions to them, let us just consider what we have in place for this year. 7 times world champion Michael Schumacher, he's back. We've got Jensen, and of course, we've got Lewis, 2 British world champions in the McLaren team. Add to that, of course, Alonso, who won the Grand Prix, and the little jewel in the crown, don't forget. We have Vettel. However, the problem is that the real fans feel they have been double-crossed. The teams had agreed a 55% reduction on aerodynamic downforce on the cars, but this did not happen. So what have we got? The dreaded double diffuser lives on. The fans are saying that the modern aerodynamics on these cars are destroying the spectacle, and something has to give.
The fans probably think the drivers aren't really, trying that much, but I mean, it's just you can't even get close.
The fans are writing to us in their thousands, and they're saying the teams, the FIA, everybody responsible, they have neglected their opportunity to do something about the spectacle.
Yes, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of comment that maybe the Bahrain race wasn't the most interesting, but small things can make a big difference.
There's something wrong with Vettel's car.
And a lot of power,
Yeah, I think it's got an exhaust broken or something like that. He's going to drive clean past him.
Maybe if he hadn't had his spark plug or engine problem, whatever it was, maybe we would have had a real ding-dong battle between Alonso and Vettel.
I think if you go back and look at Bahrain over the last few years, then it hasn't been a circuit that's had a lot of overtaking.
Everybody's complaining that it was a boring race. When I watched the TV in the last years, in Bahrain it was always boring.
The feeling from myself is that we definitely need more mechanical grip on the track and to lose some aero stuff.
Wheel-to-wheel stuff. Look at this, they're almost touching.
Patrick, you've presided over Williams for a very long time now, and you've been there through many great years. Do you think we can ever go back to that level of wheel-to-wheel combat?
It's very easy to look back with sort of through rose-coloured glasses, and maybe it's only the outstanding wheel-to-wheel races that we remember in the past.
I think we should look at some ideas in which we can perhaps through the qualifying arrange such that every single weekend we don't have the fastest car at the front, the slowest car at the rear, and wonder why we haven't got a spectacle on Sunday afternoon.
Whoa, nice one.
There's a balance between the purity of Formula One, a formula which is the most technically advanced cars, the best drivers in the world, the best teams, and the desire to have a spectacle with lots of things going on. If you get a bunch of hooligans, put them in cars making mistakes, you'll have a bit of a spectacle, a bit more like World Wrestling Federation, but it's not necessarily Formula One.
If we want to see overtaking, the easiest way is to take road cars and the race. You will have massive overtaking, but the action during the F1 race is very limited, but it's not because of one thing, of refueling or because of the aero of something. It's everything put together.
Well, you see, there is lots of engineers, there is fantastic, clever people. They all thought about this in I don't know for how many years, and none seem to have come up with a solution. And you expect me now to tell you the solution?
No pressure.
Well, once we would have been asking Michael Schumacher those kind of questions here in the Ferrari garage, but not anymore. He's in the Mercedes era of his career, not Ferrari anymore. We'll hopefully find out exactly what Michael Schumacher's thinking very shortly. And I can tell you it's getting more and more overcast and more windy by the minute, so maybe Michael will thrive in the rain here in a while. But if Michael's talking about the greatest minds in Formula One struggling to sort out something like overtaking in the sport, it makes you realise how tough it is. Why is it so hard, David?
Well, because Formula One being the pinnacle of the technology that's available for motor racing, and these cars are so aerodynamically dependent that you need clean air to get performance. And quite simply, if you're following, then your clean air is messed up and your performance drops away. So that's why it's so difficult to follow and to ultimately overtake.
And you're particularly angry with the teams about this more than anybody else, Eddie.
I feel the teams haven't done what they should do, and they have a responsibility to look after our sport. It's not their sport, it's the fan sport. And I think there was a guarantee, in my view, that they would reduce the downforce by 50 to 55%. President of Ferrari at the time, Luca Montezemolo, he would presided over the people. I want to know, why did that not happen? Because it's fundamental to our business and our sport.
Well, I think we better ask some questions, actually, of Stefano Domenicali, perhaps, because he's watching his guys work away on that Ferrari car, obviously keen to pick up another good qualifying session and maybe some more points this weekend after a great turnout in Bahrain. We'll talk about Bahrain very shortly. But first, let's pick up on the point that David and Eddie are making about the current issues in Formula One about overtaking. Since we saw the issues in Bahrain, have the teams got together? Have things been discussed to try and improve the spectacle of Formula One?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, there are two ways of solving the problem. One is, I call it artificial. The other one is to attack the real fundamental of the issue, that is the car. The car, in my view, is too efficient. Above all, we have to reduce the efficiency in the wake, because otherwise, even if you are a fantastic driver, it's almost impossible to overtake. So in the overtaking work group 2 years ago, it was decided to reduce the efficiency of the car. But unfortunately, last year, with the situation of the double diffuser, we went on the other direction. So I think that for sure is a problem that we, as teams and together with the FIA, we need to solve it now. And that's the reason why, for example, in the next meeting that we have in Malaysia within the teams, we are thinking really to do another step in terms of what we can reduce regarding the efficiency of the car already next year. Because that's, in my view, the fundamental point. All the other things you can do, 10 pit stop, you can put some water, 10 safety car, but then, in my view, it's too artificial.
Stefano, I'm probably the most outspoken about this. I think the teams have let the fans, the public, the television down. Your president, Montezemolo, who was presiding as president of FOTA last year, and he at that time, with your own study, money you've paid for, you decided on a 50 to 55% reduction of the downforce, and it never happened. The teams didn't do it. I think they were disingenuous about the whole thing. Yet when you wanted to get rid of KERS, it was a gentleman's agreement. Please tell me just one reason why it didn't happen.
I mean, to be honest with you, I shouldn't be the right person to answer this question, as you know.
It was your president.
Because last year, as you know, we were fighting like hell for that. But I think that, as always, we look ahead. And I think it's the time to discuss it and to solve the issue. And in my view, it's wrong during the season to start thinking and doing adjustment after one race, because then it's really already difficult to follow the change on the regulation. If you change every time something, the people outside they will say, what's going on? We don't understand. So in my view, it's better to wait before doing something during the year. I think it's fundamental to do something with the right simulation. Do not do the things with panicking, because otherwise it will be worse. But for sure, we need to attack the problem of the car.
So you think no knee-jerk reactions, but the Formula One teams will get together in Malaysia and something should be done?
Yeah, should be done. Okay. But in my view, really, in a very systematic and proper way. We don't have to do, okay, getting out of the meeting, everyone say, you know, we do like that. Okay, let's do it. We go on the track, we say, oh my God, this is not true. So the things has to be done properly, in my view.
Okay, let's just go a little bit more up to date. I think we need to talk about your team because you stopped the development of your car quite early on last season. You've come out with the F10. You must be delighted with the way it's performed.
Well, I mean, for sure, it's easy to say that after the first race. It was not easy to say that before, during the winter time, with all the people having the gun ready to fire, because they were waiting for us to see, hey, look at these guys, we need to see what they're going on. For sure, for me, the most important thing is that we were able to stay cool, to keep the team working head down without looking at the past. but just stay concentrate. And this year will be, I think, a very, very tough year. We didn't achieve anything apart from having a better result of last year, because we did first and second we never done last year. But you know, we just done the first race. Will be a very long season. The only thing that I'm really happy for is that at least we are there. We will fight up to the end. I think that above all, Red Bull at the moment is a little bit in front of us. Mercedes and McLaren very close, so this is the exciting of this championship. But this is why I think we should focus on the fact that we have at least 4 teams, 8 drivers that will fight for the championship. This is the point this year.
But given the pressure that, you know, you're the team leader now for Ferrari, you've been there for many years, there's such a passion for Ferrari in Italy, you must have felt a massive weight from your shoulders when the result was there in that first Grand Prix.
This is true this year. I mean, you know how is the situation from 0 to hero or the other way around in less than 1/10. But you know me, I have to stay cool, relax in the way that we need to handle the pressure. For me, it was important to keep the engineers without the pressure, keeping on my shoulder and let them drive. No, not the drive, but let them think.
Hopefully not.
Exactly. I imagine they're all driving when the cars are out on track. Everybody's watching that. Stefano, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank
really
you
good
so much.
chat. And obviously, you have not had a pole position since 2008. Perhaps today is the day.
2008.
Rain or no rain.
Okay. Look ahead. Let's hope so.
Nice to chat. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you later, Stefano. He does love his high fives. See you soon. Take care. It's interesting, actually, David, that you should mention the whole pressure thing. Because, Eddie, when they picked up the 2 drivers that they really wanted, Felipe Massa, who's very much a Ferrari man through and through, and a team leader in Fernando Alonso, obviously sort of replacing, I suppose, Michael Schumacher, who was the long-term leader. The pressure was on Stefano to deliver, wasn't it?
He's an absolutely lovely guy, isn't he? He's so accommodating. He's very happy to do the interviews with us. It's not always typical of Ferrari. You know, they've got their own television station. I think he brings to that team just very calm, controlled talent, and I think he has to get some credit for that team, the way it operates. It's no, so first of all, you have to credit him for keeping Massa over Raikkonen in that respect, and of course bringing in Alonso. They've wanted him for some time. I think they have a team that they see is going to stay complete for the next 3 to 4 years, and that'll be huge for them.
Okay, just about 43 minutes until qualifying gets underway here in Australia. Let's talk about some of the team's chances. We're now outside the Red Bull garage, and this is a huge weekend for Mark Webber. Not only has he had the grandstand down at the end of the start-finish straight named after him, they've now got the Mark Webber grandstand. But for the first time, he comes to his home Grand Prix with the potential to actually win this race.
Well, indeed, he not only has a grandstand named after him, he's got his face on a stamp, and you know, up until this point it looks like a second-class stamp. But you know, he's delivered some quick times here in the practice sessions, and he'll be looking to go first class. And you know, what a great story it would be if he could deliver a performance and a win here this weekend for the Aussie fans. 5th place is his best result here in the past, but he's really focused on it for this weekend. So I definitely think we've got a very good chance of seeing him at the top.
Okay, let's make our way down here to have a look at some of the new teams, because we do want to have a little chat about Virgin and get to the other end of the pit lane. It's quite important, actually, that Red Bull sort out their reliability issues, isn't it? Because Sebastian Vettel really did have a good opportunity last year to pick up some race wins that eluded him, and that's exactly how the season started for him.
I hope they don't rue the day we saw last year. For me, that was the class car of last year, irrespective of the Brawn was very consistent, very reliable and fabulous car. But the real classy car in terms of outright speed was the Red Bull. They've got it in abundance again this year. They have optimized the double diffuser, which they're entitled to do, and Vettel was so unlucky to be robbed of that win last weekend. I mean, that was a moral win, and must hopefully is not just in the back of his mind, and that he can go from here, and I think he'll be a force for the season, no doubt about it. He's a class act.
A quick mention about Sauber. Your old pal Pedro De La Rosa's back in a Formula 1 car racing again. This is very much a Brawn situation, really. This car is essentially a BMW. They spent a lot of money and a lot of time developing it, and it turns up with no sponsors on and very white. They haven't quite had the start to the year that Brawn enjoyed, though, last year, have they?
No, they look good in winter testing, but I think that we can presume now that that was because they're running less fuel than others, and probably looking at how blank the car is, they were trying to attract some sponsors to the team. It's probably something that Eddie did in the past when
never
pre-season
testing. What are you alluding to?
But anyway, now they can't hide from their performance, and you know, at the moment they're not really in the hunt to be in the top 10 and scoring good points, and it's always going to be the big challenge, you know, how quickly you can develop during the season. And of course, to move forward, you've got to outthink and outsmart the other people who are also developing their cars.
OK, we've got Williams behind us there. They're now looking for win 114. Will that come their way this season? And we're in front of the Renault garage now, and it's quite nice. I love this Renault car. It's a bit like the sort of Renault car of the turbo eras in the late 70s and early 80s.
It looks a bit
First time
ugly.
I've ever seen Lada on the side of a Formula One car. And that's because Vitaly Petrov's in Formula One, the first ever Lada champion. That is an unusual route to get into this sport, isn't it?
Well, it is indeed. Now, I was in an event actually not long ago in Moscow, an ice racing event where he was pretty handy. Apparently that's how he started doing ice racing. So I think he's the only guy in the grid who didn't start in karting like everyone else. So he's really delivered some good pace given his relative lack of experience. But I just don't think it's a very pretty looking car. It's interesting that
Do you not like it? I like the black and white.
No, maybe it's
So where's the white? I thought
it's
it
a
was
bit too
black and
yellow
black
for my
and
liking.
yellow. Maybe it reminds me of Jordan. I think that's why I like it. Renault were a team that were really knocked down quite a bit though last year. Obviously there was the big headlines with the big names in the team, but the guys, the engineers who are working hard, really felt that they've been dragged through it. In some ways, for them, undeservingly. So they've got a lot to prove. And actually, that car, DC might not like the look of it, but it's not slow, is it?
Well, I think the car's big improvement. One of the problems last year was it was just disjointed. Well, the car wasn't good, but the whole team was disjointed. No one knew what they wanted. Obviously, in the back of their mind, the team probably knew that Renault wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And from that point of view, you're always fighting an uphill battle. Well done to Bob Bell. Bob Bell has managed to hold on to the people, or most of the people in the team, and they are hugely experienced. That same team is the core team that won 2 world championships recently. And then if you go back to Michael Schumacher, another couple of champions. So there's 4 times world champions in there, and you don't do that unless you've got serious talent and a lot of expertise.
No. Now, if you take a look behind us, you can see the names of Senna, HRT, Kovalainen, a couple of Lotus drivers and the 2 Hispania Racing drivers as well. They're just 2 of the new teams to join Formula One. The other is next to them. It's Virgin Racing. Now, it's been so tough for these teams. A year ago, driving in Formula One for all of these guys was just a dream. However, very suddenly, they got the place on the grid. They then had to design a car, build a car, and before they got to the first race, make it to winter testing. Well, Virgin did just that, and we were there to capture the moment.
Pre-season testing is often referred to as the Winter Grand Prix. The teams only have 15 car days to fine-tune the handling of their brand new cars and practice things like pit stops. Imagine just how tough all that is for a brand new team like Virgin Racing.
Break down, baby.
The latest Formula One regulations restrict the teams to just 4 test sessions pre-season. During this very limited time, they must fine-tune their brand new cars for speed and reliability and perfect procedures for lightning-fast pit stops. It's only 1 car per team, and so drivers share the track time in order to learn the car and hone their skills. For brand new teams like Virgin Racing, this is a critical and difficult challenge. With such a mountain to climb, it must at times have seemed like mission impossible. Nick, you've created a team and a car in just a few months. That's one of the toughest challenges I've ever seen in Formula One. How's it been going?
It's been interesting. We did really well in terms of the program. We set ourselves out a task of achieving certain objectives, like, for example, crash tests, having them done before Christmas so we could enjoy a Christmas turkey. And like all great things, it's only when you first come in contact with the enemy that your plans change. And in our case, the enemy has been the track.
Virgin missed the first test and so only had 12 days of running. Circuit action can be further interrupted by bad weather, accidents, unreliability and red flags. This is especially tough for their drivers, not least new boy Lucas Di Grassi.
Has been very difficult for me because of the limited mileage we're allowed to test. I'm new into Formula One. I've done so little mileage so far that would be ideal to do much more.
It's so intense, this testing period, this 12 days that we have of getting it together, all under the public spotlight, all together. You can't run, you can't hide.
Brought Drake the front blankets. We need to drape your rear blankets as well.
There's no University of Formula One. I guess you've had to find people who've already got some experience.
Yeah, and also similarly people that haven't. So we have some sort of pecking order, and we can't do too much talking. We have to do a lot of doing at the moment. Average day is 21, 22 hours. We also run a night shift as well, so the amount of effort that everyone's put in to get to this stage is just unbelievable.
Timo Glock moves from Toyota, formerly the richest team on the grid, to an outfit with only a fraction of that budget.
I knew what's going on in a new team, and for me it was clear that we don't have the capacity like we had it at Toyota. And for that reason, I'm at the moment still quite easy on all the problems we have.
The Virgin car is designed using computational fluid dynamics, or CFD. Unlike the other cars, it's never seen a wind tunnel, only software and simulators. It remains to be seen if this is the future or an unsuccessful gamble. So how do you start then with this computer? I mean, it still looks like a Formula One car. It doesn't look like Starship Enterprise.
Well, at the end of the day, CFD is just a tool, and we set out on this mission really to come as a new team under what was the cost-limited Formula One, where we had 45 million euros. And really our experience of sports car racing was the only way to really deliver a car of this quality, of this aerodynamic performance within that budget, was to use this method. So we were very excited to prove it.
Despite the testing, when the season got underway, there's been some inevitable growing pains, not least when a wheel made a bid for freedom in practice for the Bahrain Grand Prix.
My wheel came off, front left wheel came off.
The race itself was not much better, with further reliability issues. It's easy to forget, though, just how far they've come.
We had nothing to start with at all. Not a spanner, not a drain tray, nothing. We had to start completely from scratch, and it's been very tough. But you know, we like a challenge.
It's bound to be a long and tough season for all the new teams. Let's hope they make it through.
Well, they've made it this far, and for the three new teams, that really is just a success in itself. And I'm pleased to say that Nick Worth, but despite having a very busy garage behind us, as all of his guys are gearing up for qualifying, has found time to come and join us. The first ever car designed on a computer. I imagine people were queuing up with "computer says no" jokes for you, but you arrived in Bahrain and you were quickest of the new teams. You must have been delighted.
Yeah, it's nice to prove some of the naysayers wrong. But I think that side has kind of paled into insignificance. The CFD's proved itself. We're getting the numbers we thought. Really, for us, the issue has been reliability, getting all the small gremlins out, and that's really dominated our pre-season and, in fact, the early part of the season for us too.
So a few small gremlins, you know, hydraulics issues and things, and I suppose a slightly bigger gremlin in that it looks like you haven't got a fuel tank big enough to race to the end of a Grand Prix. Just explain to us how that situation came about.
Well, you know, for us, for this team, for Virgin Racing, you know, Formula One is about a technical challenge. It's about pushing the boundaries, and you know, the thing is that sometimes those boundaries move. The thing which determines the size of a fuel tank is really a combination of the sporting regulations, the technical regulations, the type of fuel you use, and how much fuel the engine uses. And for us, we kind of set the car up. We had to lock down the monocoque in June last year for our production schedules, and 3 of those 4 things had actually changed between June and Bahrain. And really, we needed to get to Bahrain and see where we were before we made this difficult decision.
How far are you out, how far were you out in your calculations? Because presumably your engine supplier, Cosworth, would say, look, this is how much fuel it's going to use per lap. You know what the longest race is, so you could set it by that.
Well, actually, if you go through the little pieces, I mean, if you remember the old days when we used to do races with a full tank, we used to do topping off on the grid, which was a sporting regulation which wasn't clear at that time, so there's a little bit of fuel there. The numbers from Cosworth have been very consistent and they haven't been an issue. Probably the single biggest issue for us has been the fact that in June we thought we were going to get a high density fuel. We were told we were going to get that, and actually that changed in the middle of October at the Brazilian Grand Prix. And finally, for us, the technical regulations, again in Brazil, they changed and they said they wanted to do a big impact test with a full tank of fuel, which caused us to have to change the construction of the monocoque. All these little things have added up and left us too marginal to be really comfortable.
Was it a mistake to be too marginal, do you think, at the very beginning? I mean, it's not like having a slightly too big a fuel tank would have cost you a championship, for example. The aim this year is to race to the end of races, isn't it? And you need enough fuel to do that.
It is, but you know, again, length, weight of the car and everything is all important. You know, we pushed the boundaries, we got it slightly wrong. Possibly we're not the only people to make that mistake. We're going to find out. This is quite a tough race. It's much tougher than Bahrain, and so I think we're going to see some interesting things here.
Very quickly, Nick, how much will this affect your development of this car, having to work on increasing the size of the fuel cell?
It's actually not too bad for us. It's a small modification to the monocoque. And also some bodywork as well, but what we're going to do is introduce that along with other aerodynamic changes. At one point we're trying to get it for Barcelona, so we should be okay for this. It's not as bad as it may sound.
You can finish this race though.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
don't worry about them.
Exactly, hopefully they won't run out of fuel. You know, this race, there's so many factors in racing. This race is traditionally one of the worst ones for safety cars. You save a huge amount of fuel there. There's all sorts of strategies from sports car racing we know about how to save fuel, but we want to go racing. We want to race hard. We're not here to make the numbers up, and that's why we decided to make this change.
Okay, well, I know that Timo's started laps so far this weekend. It's been another tough weekend for you, but fingers crossed for qualifying today. You can now stand here and enjoy the plane. And yes, I hope it doesn't run out of fuel. And next door is Eddie Jordan. He's hanging out, having some fun in another of the new teams. Because Eddie, you're really loving this story, aren't you, about new teams coming into Formula One? There he is with an old pal of his.
Jake, thank you very much. Yes, I'm here in Lotus. Lotus won, in their view, the little battle for the new teams last weekend. They had a fantastic time in Bahrain, of course, both cars finishing. Mike Gascoigne, no stranger to me, I must tell you. But Mike, if I may just ask you, you must be a complete glutton for punishment to be doing this all over again.
Yeah, well, so many teams, you know, I've worked for a lot of them, but this is great, you know.
Come on, give us a list. Who are they?
Well, started at McLaren, Sauber, Tyrrell, went on to Jordan.
God, that was a mistake in the first place, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, some could say that. An enjoyable time. We won our first races together. Right. Then on to Benetton, Renault, Toyota, Force India, and now back here at Lotus. But great to be doing a start-up team, a real challenge, and of course bringing a great name back to Formula One.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about the name because, you know, in Colin Chapman's days, and people used to affectionately call him Chunky Chapman, and you know, he's greatly missed, as we know, because he was such a magical guy. Do you think his name still lives through this car and everything that was emotive about it and brought it to the great name that he is?
Well, it is a fantastic name, and it needs to be back in Formula One. And I think what was really special for me in Bahrain is to people like having Mario Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi in the garage for qualifying, watching the cars going out. And they were there because they wanted to see the name back, and I think that's as good an endorsement as you can have.
Mike, I must ask you this because I'm on a little bit of a roll these days, a little bit of a hobby horse. I am so upset with the teams, and you're now a team. I want to ask you about the aerodynamic loss of the fact that we should have had with the overtaking group, the 50% that we were promised. Where's it gone to, and how are we going to get that back?
Well, I think, you know, there's a clear directive from the overtaking working group to reduce overall downforce. And of course they allowed the loophole of the double diffuser to come in, and we're really now running downforce levels, you know, that were the same as 2 years ago. And although we've banned it, you know, for next year, you've got to ask yourself, is that a year too late? Because obviously we had all the comments about a boring race last weekend. But I think we've got to be careful, not have knee-jerk reactions. I think we're going to have a great weekend here, great title fight. So I don't think we should have a knee-jerk reaction from Bahrain.
I clearly don't disagree, but nevertheless, you know, we're looking here at your front wing, and it's got more winglets and turning vanes and God knows what. I mean, it just doesn't look right to somebody who's, you know, feels the fibre and the passion of what we know as Formula One. This is so artificial almost.
Well, I think, you know, certainly our drivers would support cars with less downforce because they've got less downforce than most of the other guys. So hopefully it would bring it, you know, and it levels the playing field, so we'd support it. But I think we've missed a trick not following up on what the overtaking working group suggested.
Quite apart from being the objective to be the best of the new teams, can you actually get up amongst the other guys?
Yeah, we're very confident. You know, we've done exactly what we said we'd do at the start of the year, which is come here, be reliable, good professional Formula One team. But from Barcelona onwards, we've got to move forward. We We've got two fantastic drivers and they deserve a much better car, and you'll see a big step from Barcelona, and then we'll be marching forward. I think the whole team's very confident of that.
Mike, thank you. As an old pal, I wish you lots of success and thank you very much.
Good to see Eddie there, and he wasn't being rudely interrupted too badly by this FA team from the Australian Air Force. Murray Walker used to say they really do it very, very well here in Australia, and they do put on quite a show, and the spectators turn up in their droves for it. Come on, David, you've not driven a Formula One car for a few months. How about jumping in that? That looks like fun, doesn't it?
It looks like a rush, doesn't it? But feel better here on the ground.
I think so. And one man who's about to drive a Formula One car is Paul de Resta. Paul, fantastic to see you in here, and congratulations this weekend, because you are now the new test driver for Force India, and this weekend you got your first taste of driving at a Formula One weekend. I imagine it's mixed emotions though, because when the race gets going you'd rather be jumping into the car rather than standing in here, but at least you've had a taste of it. How was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite difficult having driven in the first practice to sit out the second one. But it's been a fantastic experience, you know, being involved more with an F1 team and getting more involved in how the situation works during the sessions. It all ran quite smoothly. I had to start a bit from the bottom to the top, but you know, I think we did a good job. We're able to help the team a bit and go forward.
Well, I couldn't miss the opportunity with, you know, a bit of nationalism here. Great to see another Scot getting his chance coming through. What was the emotion like when you were first out on track there? A proper Grand Prix weekend. You know, you're actually borrowing the car from Adrian Sutil yesterday, so presumably he was looking at you with daggers as you drove out in his car.
Yeah, well, he quickly mentioned, you know, that he would be chasing me if something happened. And that's always the thing, you know, you have to be quite safe, especially here at Melbourne. It's a street circuit, so if you're going to have a small off, I don't think you're going to be coming back on.
How much did you have in hand, do you think, from the session?
I had for sure bits in hand. There's some sections of the track that are very narrow, and I believe I could have went better. You know, my last lap was the best lap after 22 laps on the tyres, so there's still time in there. But you know, it's just getting the chance to move forward, and hopefully next time we can improve upon that.
Well, we saw Adrian Sutil standing in the back of the garage there during the practice session, watching you in the car, obviously thinking, please don't crash my car. It's huge kudos for you though to come into a team as a test driver, and for the team to say, do you know what, we're going to give up one session a week for one of our race drivers to give our test driver the time in the car. I mean, it certainly looks like they're lining you up to be a racing driver, doesn't it?
Well, I hope so. Certainly, you know, they want to give me the time in the car to try and be as ready as possible should it come up. You know, and it's just being part of the team, more involved, and going forward. And hopefully, you know, one day we can get in a race seat to go forward.
Now, you've come up through a slightly unusual route in that you come Euro F3 and then DTM. You didn't do GP2 like the other drivers. Clearly, that hasn't held you back.
No, I mean, I didn't think it ever was going to. You know, Mercedes have been fantastic to me. They've helped me through my career. And, you know, they owe a lot of credit to what I've achieved during this. And, you know, I hope to continue the relationship. But, you know, they know my focus is on F1. And clearly that's what my goal is, and hopefully they're behind that as well.
But the good news about being a DTM driver, of course, this season, as well as a test driver, is if they need you, you'll be race ready. Thank you very much. Really good to chat, and good luck for the rest of this season. And while Paul is waiting for his chance to drive in a Formula One car, there's another young man who's already had his opportunity. His name is Nico Hulkenberg. His nickname is the Hulk, and incredible things are expected.
Was it because of Williams that you wanted to settle into England?
To be honest, I feel very comfortable where I am in Oxford, and you know, I just wanted to be close to the team, to be there if there are meetings, or you know, just to be there anytime if there's something going on. I want to be informed about it, and it was also I felt the time was right to move out from home in Germany, so I made that choice, and I'm very pleased with that.
Are you naturally competitive?
Oh yeah, of course. I think all racing drivers are. We have to be, I think. Yeah, we have to stop now, I think. Stop it here.
Why?
You're getting too good.
I think almost every reasonable championship that you've taken part in, you've actually won, from BMW to A1 to GP2 to Euro F3. Is that the same aim when you're starting off your Formula One career?
Oh, for sure. But now I'm, you know, the top of motorsport, Formula One, the best teams of the world, the best drivers of the world. It's not easy. That doesn't give me. Oh, it's my mobile. It's my dad.
Important.
My dad.
It might have been Billy Webber and Michael Schumacher with some last-minute tips.
No, Michael's not calling me.
Stop, Nico, stop.
Why?
Because I want to speak to you. I've got more questions to ask you.
I thought we were here to do some shooting.
Yeah, but we're here to tell the viewers about Nico Hulkenberg. That's what they want to know.
Come on.
Just talking about Billy, I mean, he's supported you from an early age. Has he ever said to you what it was that he saw that made him want to work with you? Because he's worked with Michael in the past, and that's how everybody knows him.
He saw some good results. I think he saw the talent, and he saw the attitude I have, which maybe fits well with the sport, and it reminded him of Michael. That's what he said.
And what about Michael? How much has he advised you or spoken to you over the years?
Not at all, to be honest.
Yeah. 2-2. Should we call it a draw?
No.
What would be a successful season in the eyes of Nico Hulkenberg?
Scoring lots of points. And you know, at the end of 2010, if I look back on the year and if I'm happy and satisfied.
I got the first one. Does that make me a winner, Nico, in the eyes of Nico Hulkenberg?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And this is the car that Nico Hulkenberg will be taking out for his second ever Formula One qualifying session. Now, David, you've been very impressed with Nico Hulkenberg, haven't you? He's come into this sport with a real buzz around him.
Yeah, he has. He's very much together in his thoughts. When you talk to him, he doesn't sound like a rookie. He's got very clear focus on what he needs to learn about Formula One and where he wants to be. So I wouldn't be surprised that he's going to be a star of the future.
And of course he shares Michael Schumacher's manager as well. He's the only driver to share that honour with Michael Schumacher. You work with a lot of young drivers in your time. There are 5 rookies on the grid at the moment. Nico has admitted he didn't have the best of first race weekends. How do you calm a driver down when they're so keen to get into a Formula One car and prove to the world that they're the fastest guy out there on their first race weekend?
Well, first I think you have to make sure that they know that you are human, that they're human. Yes, he made a mistake. You've got to put your arm around him. You've got to make sure that he is a major ingredient of the team. Make him feel part of the team. Make him feel wanted and loved. And you can so staggered as to how that can grow in terms of stature and mental approval. And I think that this guy is another Vettel. I was very impressed the fact that he's kind of dismissed Michael Schumacher. Not many German young drivers would do that because he sees himself in a different era to Michael Schumacher. That was the past. Yes, Michael's on the grid here, but he's not thinking about that. He's thinking about himself and how he's going to become a champion.
He's actually integrated himself into the factory. He's been there working in the carbon shop. He's been in the gearbox shop. You know, he's been living amongst the guys, really trying to understand a Grand Prix car from production to racetrack.
And we've got a GP2 champion here. We've just chatted to Paul de Resta, who's making his name in DTM as well as in Formula One now. It was only quite recently that people were saying there's no natural path into Formula One for young drivers. What do you see as the sort of natural path to this sport?
Well, I think the reality is you're good enough. You can come from many different routes. We see it with Paul de Resta there getting his chance from DTM. We see with Petrov coming from ladder racing a few years ago. I think what happens is naturally when you only have in the past 20 cars on the grid, if your driver's having a sort of long 10-year career, there isn't that much turnover of new talent coming into the sport. What we've seen is a sort of passing of the older generation, apart from Michael coming back, and that's allowed a lot of these younger drivers to make their way.
Okay, well, one young driver will be making his way out to qualifying very soon. You can see the guys are starting to look more and more serious by the moment as qualifying approaches. But when we came here 12 months ago, the story really was all about one team, Brawn, and that's incredible one-two finish. But it wasn't just the team we were interested in, it was also a small part on the back of the car. And believe it or not, 12 months later, the double diffuser is still in our vocabulary. Here's Martin Brundle.
The phrase double diffuser for me is like millennium bug or credit crunch. I'll be happy when I never hear it again. What does it mean? Well, we're sneaking into the Lotus garage, an unusual opportunity to poke about at the back of their car just before the car goes out onto the racetrack. The diffuser is at the back of the car underneath. It's a venturi that creates downforce, suction, if you like. And as the air passes underneath the car, it works in conjunction with the rear wing to give the cars that amazing amount of grip. Double diffuser, if we look at the back here, is this secondary hole here that picks up air further upstream and uses it to create extra downforce off the lower beam of the rear wing. Quite complicated, but very effective. What does it look like off the car? Well, here is one. Again, it's unusual to be offered this opportunity to see this kind of technical detail. And basically, this is the entrance to the double diffuser, the second diffuser, and the strakes, and the primary diffuser that also generates downforce.
Okay, just over 15 minutes until qualifying then here for the Australian Grand Prix. Stay right where you are. It's going to be very good indeed. And actually, I said to Nick Worth when we were waiting to interview him, what's the deal with the rain? Because it is very windy, it is very cloudy. He said at the moment their computers are telling them no rain at the moment. So, double diffusers. We saw them a year ago. We're still talking about them now, 12 months later. Here's Ted Kravitz to explain why in this week's news.
Australian driving offences are the least of Lewis Hamilton's worries, as McLaren have been forced to redesign their diffuser following a clarification of the rules. It's all about this hole in the middle of the diffuser that's meant to accommodate the starting motor. McLaren had a bigger hole than this one on the Mercedes and were using it to give them extra downforce. The hole now has to be of an exact size, and it's cost McLaren between 1 and 2/10 of a second per lap.
You're always looking for every little edge on the car, and you know, every little bit is tiny, but adding them together can make quite a big chunk. So I think there are many teams that have changed their diffusers slightly, but it's not like last season, the difference in the diffusers.
After the failure of USF1, led by Peter Windsor here on the right and Ken Anderson to make this year's grid, the FIA have invited applications for a new team next year.
The most important thing is we don't end up with a situation like with USF1 where they end up voting on things, having been granted an entry, yet, haven't shown up at the first race.
Ferrari's race-winning engines overheated during the Bahrain Grand Prix, and the team can't be sure they won't suffer similar problems in Malaysia next week. Meantime, Fernando Alonso is unmoved by criticism of the F1 show and says people who find the racing boring should just live with it.
Last year, the first 7 races, Jenson won 6 or 7, and it was boring. Maybe yes, maybe not. This is Formula 1. Michael won 5 championships consecutive. It was boring. Maybe yes, maybe not. This is Formula 1. People that want extra show, maybe they need to reconsider if they want to watch Formula 1.
Even though he's going into his home race with a winning car for the first time, Mark Webber's downplaying his chances of victory this weekend.
It's a great opportunity for me to get a good result, but also it's one race in a big picture. So if I'm sitting second, third or whatever, and that's all I can do, then obviously we go to Malaysia from here, and then Melbourne is quickly forgotten.
There's a lot of power.
Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel's looking for the win after unreliability cost him the race in Bahrain. Vettel can hardly fail to improve on his previous Australian results.
I haven't finished the race here, so last year I managed not to finish, and the year before I was taken out in first corner already, so looking forward to see checkered flag first of all.
Sauber had a worrying front wing failure in practice here yesterday. Kamui Kobayashi was unhurt in the accident. It turned out he had weakened the front wing pillar mountings in an earlier spin, which then failed later in the session. And finally, the drivers' boycott of the grid looks set to continue in a row over grid passes. The drivers' physiotherapists have not been given access to the grid this season, so with the exception of Fernando Alonso, Felipe Massa and some of the smaller teams' drivers, the rest of them are refusing to make themselves available on the grid before the race and are walking back to the garage to be with their trainers.
We need to find a solution because the drivers, they need that final bit of preparation before they jump in the car. Physio is as much, perhaps for some drivers, a mental coach as well as a physiotherapist. So, hopefully, common sense will prevail and we'll see them back on the grid very soon.
I think it's very important having a physio on the grid, and I'm sure every driver feels the same way.
Well, the drivers will be missing their physios, but you won't miss a trick this weekend here on the BBC. Remember, the BBC Formula 1 website, you can watch everything that happens right there. You can also press the red button during the race for some additional data feeds. And if you do just so happen to miss anything this weekend, after all, we are on early, then you can catch it all on the BBC iPlayer. But as you can see, we've now decamped to the paddock here in Australia. This is one of the most popular paddocks, actually, on the entire circuit. It's really tight, and everyone sits outside. It's a bit like a sort of posh Formula One garden party with all the F1 drivers of the world invited. But there are, of course, still concerns. People are saying that if overtaking was tricky in Bahrain a couple of weeks ago, what about here? It's quite a technical, temporary circuit. Well, all that means, of course, is that qualifying becomes even more important. And who are the perfect people to ask about how to nail a perfect lap in qualifying? Well, it's the drivers.
Australia, Albert Park, 3.295 miles, left 58, downforce, medium, classic moment, Ralph takes off, 2002.
I do love being here. The weather's fantastic. It's a great trip, great city, and the circuit. You know, it's our first real street circuit of the year, and the car feels awesome. When you get the car set up really nice, it's just so nice and flowing.
The track is quite interesting. It's a very challenging, quite narrow comparing to Bahrain, especially. A big shock for us. It should be interesting to drive a Formula 1 car here after driving the Formula 3 many years ago.
So have you driven this track before?
No.
Okay. So you
station. Just a very nice circuit layout and altogether a cool place to be.
You need to have a good balance on the braking, stability, and then a good traction. There's no really high-speed corner apart one, but you also change in direction. So, and also you need to make sure that your tires are working pretty well on this track.
The slow speed is where you make up the time. It's stability on braking. So you have lots to be gained in the likes of turns 3, 4, 5.
The quick chicane out the back is always very nice to get right. The very fast left-right-hander, long kink in the build-up, but obviously easy flat, and then you've got to be very accurate with the first part of the left-hander. So enjoy that. Yeah, it's good.
The two high-speed corners, they're 5th gear, left-right. That's a lot of fun, and especially on low fuel, new tyres, circuits rubbered in, Q3. That'll be a place to watch.
Right, 9 minutes to go until qualifying. The real countdown starts right now. David, pole position was something that eluded you here. You managed to pick up a couple of race wins. What's the secret to a really good qualifying run here? Is there a certain part of the track where you can pick up a lot of time or not lose a lot of time?
Well, inevitably, you've got to get all 3 sectors ace, but for me, it was always that last sector, and that makes a difference if you can really keep your tyres together. There's 2 or 3 corners there that require a lot of front-end grip, and if you can keep the fronts working to that point, then I think that's what delivers the pole position lap.
OK, well, Mark Webber will be so keen to go well in this qualifying session here on home soil. And the good news for him is they had a really good last practice session before qualifying a little bit earlier on today, and we can now hear from his team principal, Christian Horner. He's with Lee.
Christian, how are things looking before qualifying? I think Mark should be happy.
Yeah, no, Mark's in good form. You know, as Seb is, they both seem happy with the car. Just making a few little changes before, effectively going to Parc Fermé rules. So, but no, both drivers seem pretty upbeat. But it looks tight. The Mercedes is quick. The McLaren looks pretty quick. The Ferraris look there or thereabouts. So it's going to be a tight session, I think.
Clouds look as if they're coming in to spoil the party. Any forecasts of rain this afternoon?
There's some rain in the area, and it's looking very English weather. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on the satellite and. Just make sure we're out on the track at the right time.
And even if you have a good car out there, traffic's going to be such a big problem out there.
Well, it's a much bigger problem here than it was in Bahrain. The lap was so long in Bahrain, they got a lot more spaced out. But we're seeing closing speeds of, the guys 5-6 seconds a lap slower in some instances. So trying to find our boys a clear bit of space in that first session is going to be crucial.
And that's the trick in qualifying, finding some clear space to put in a good lap. We'll hear from Martin Whitmarsh, the McLaren team principal, in just a moment. But talking about Mark Webber, it's quite funny this week. Lewis Hamilton, who's been a bit of a naughty boy on the public roads in Australia as well, tried to sort of prematurely retire the home favourite, didn't he?
Yeah, I think actually he got his comeback, didn't he, where Mark obviously spoke to the local police and had them standing there when he left the circuit last night. But yeah, I think that it's a bit premature to be suggesting he should be retiring. He's only in his early 30s. Look at Schumacher's 41.
Look at you, David. You're making another comeback, aren't you? Yeah. Happy birthday, by the way. Happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday indeed to David. Nice to have you here with us on your 21st birthday.
I think Lewis should remember how many races Mark won towards the end of last year. I tell you what, I think that was quite a cheeky comment, and I think...
A little bit of mind games, do you think, from a guy who
no,
he
I
knows
don't
is
think
fast
so.
and has got a fast
I think he might need his dad back here to make sure he gets looked after. He certainly wouldn't have got into trouble with the police leaving the circuit, and he might not have said what he should have... Well, he shouldn't have said it in the first place.
OK, well, let's hear from Lewis's boss, actually. Martin Whitmarsh has been talking to Ted Kravitz.
Martin, final thoughts before qualifying. How do you think you're going to go?
Well, I think it looks tough. I think there's some rain in the air at the moment, so we could actually have some rain at the end of the qualifying session. I think the prime tyre, you've got to probably stay out there for a few laps to get it warmed up. I suspect the quicker cars will try and use the prime tyre in Q1, so that's a bit of a challenge, but it's going to be tough. I think it's obviously competitive. We'll see how we go.
And how's Lewis doing after all the attention that he's got in the paddock this morning?
He's having a sleep at the moment, so I think he was careful pulling out of the pits. Not too many wheel spins here today, but I think he'll be fine this afternoon.
Good stuff, thanks very much.
OK, big day for Martin Whitmarsh. She'll be hoping that McLaren can step up after being well off the pace a couple of weeks ago, and they'll be looking for some clear air along with everyone else in this first part of qualifying.
Yeah, well, indeed, and it's so important on this lap, much more than Bahrain. A lot more twists and turns on the track, a lot of camber changes here, and you know, clear lap is going to be absolutely key to getting through in qualifying.
OK, well, Martin Whitmarsh will be hoping there's nothing to worry him in this first part of qualifying, but who will be the four guys who will slip out in the first part of qualifying in the company of Martin Brundle, alongside your race commentator, Jonathan Ledyard.